Hello, everyone. Eric here again, and today I have a very interesting system that I've developed that I'm going to call the development of the will. And what it is it tracks the journey that human beings undertake uh, in the progressive development of the will. Now, today, before I tell you what the will is and what we're tracking the development of, like exactly what I mean here, I have to point out something very important. I am wearing my Eric Cartman, respect my authority t-shirt. So you have to listen to what I say. See, I don't make the rules. I just think them up and tell them to you. Okay? You have to respect my authority. Shirt says so. You have to listen to what I say. Okay? Anyways. So, uh, yeah, the will. So what do I mean by the will? Well, the will is the set of your desires and your aversions. By desires, I just mean the things that you desire, the things that you want. Examples would be like everyone tends to want to be well fed and well clothed. We don't want to be cold. We don't we want to get enough rest at night, etc. Right? Like all the human desires. And it can even be more than basic desires. It can be the desire to uh, for belonging. It can be the desire for a new sports car. It can be the desire to win the football game. You know, whatever it might be. Whatever you desire is part of your will. The other part of the will is the opposite of desire, aversions, things you want to keep away from you. I've mentioned in past videos, I have a strong aversion to cigarettes and cigarette smoke. Ugh, I can't stand the smell. It just, ugh. So, that's an aversion that I have. But anything that you're averse to, most of us are averse to pain. Most of us are averse to illness. We don't like these things. We want to keep them away from us. So altogether, desires and aversions, I am calling the will. Now, it's important to note that I'm sort of reifying the will here and treating it as if it's a solid object, like it's its own individual thing. Now, in some of the later levels of development, this is not the case. You kind of learn that desires come and go. The will is not some static thing. The desires and aversions that you had 10 years ago, in many cases, may be very different now. So the will is constantly undergoing change. It's not some static, reified thing. But I'm going to treat it like such for today. I don't see the harm in doing so as long as I make this note and you kind of understand that's just, not really the case, but I find it useful. So we're going to proceed along those lines. So let's take a look here. This is the entire process from animal-like at the lowest. This is where we all start as children. Some people don't develop beyond this stage. Um, like 99% of people do in our society anyways. It's very difficult to live in our society without developing to the civilized stage. And in fact, what we tend to consider the job of parents is to civilize their children, is to bring them up to that stage. It's a huge part of what we consider to be good parenting. But we're going to start the animal-like stage, and we're going to go through all these one by one, including the line in the middle there. I have an important note there. There's not a lot to say about that line. It's just an important threshold. So we're gonna talk about it. I probably could have put another line between consciousness and all consciousness, because that's probably the biggest threshold of all. I mean, to be honest, but it's so few people make it that far that it's like, I don't know. Probably not really worth dwelling too much on, but I will discuss those two levels, consciousness and all consciousness. They're just very, very rare. I mean, very rare levels for people to for like, you don't find hardly anyone at those levels. You just don't. But so let's start with the animal-like stage here. So the animal-like stage is the stage that people are just completely consumed by their will. They're completely enchanted by it. Just whatever their short-term gratification, their short-term impulses, they're going to act on it. Like the highest level of development within the stage are people that will put off their short-term gratification just enough not to get caught, not to get arrested, not to get authorities on on them. So at this level, like I think we all know people at this level, they tend to have a sort of animal-like or zombie-like feel to them because they just don't seem to think. All they just do is seem to react to their own emotions, react to their own impulses. I've back when I was homeless, I was homeless for 4 years. I remember this guy who had just gotten out of prison, and I don't know how long he was in there for. It would not surprise me if he was in there for quite a long time. And so he came to live at the shelter. And immediately when this guy walked in the room, you could see everyone look at him like, yeah, I don't want to be anywhere near this guy. Like he just walked in a certain way, just had a certain way about him that was like, ugh, this guy's gonna be a nightmare. Well, it didn't take him long to find himself back behind bars, maybe like a week or two, because he started assaulting the other guests at the homeless shelter, peed in a few of their beds. One he was trying to set up drug deals with, and like they fell through or someone got screwed, and so he started peeing inside their. He took all their clothes and peed on all their clothes. Yeah, he didn't really last too long. Um, that is a that guy probably had a very low level of development even within the animal like stage. Just cannot put off his short term gratification whatsoever. And it was just so strange the first time I saw him. Like you could immediately tell this guy was trouble. Immediately tell that this guy just was not civilized in any way, shape, or form. Like immediately, he had that animal like predatory type feel to him. I think Trailer Park Boys is a great depiction of people at this level, and it's just really funny to boot. And true to character, the characters in the show are in and out of jail all the time. Uh, in fact, they kind of don't mind going to jail. They see it as a little bit of a break from having to struggle. Um, the only character in that show that probably is at the civilized stage or out of the main characters is probably Bubbles. But Bubbles is probably at the civilized stage, but certainly Randy and Julian um, uh, are at the animal-like stage. No doubt. Uh, yeah. So the next stage is the civilized stage. And the civilized stage is when people can first step back from their desires, at least somewhat. Like as people progress in the stage, they're able to step back from their desires a little more, a little more, a little more. But being able to step back from their desires, what they tend to do is they tend to recognize more and more through the civilized stage that the desires that you feed become stronger, and the desires that you don't feed will weaken or even become extinct. Now, extinction is a psychological term, um, and it means it's usually used as regards to behavior. That say you're training an animal and you stop reinforcing a specific kind of behavior, then the animal will stop reacting in the way that you want that you trained it to do because you're no longer reinforcing it. You're no longer giving it a treat or whatever it is. So the psychologists say the behavior goes extinct. Well, people at this stage, at the civilized stage, usually have a fairly unconscious and rudimentary understanding of this. It's not necessarily that they've studied psychology and they understand it, but they sort of understand that if they continue to feed certain desires within themselves, those desires grow, and the desires that they don't feed will weaken. So, for example, people recognize that if you take addictive drugs, that leads down a path, well, back to here a lot of times, you know, into not as a not fun place to be. So so at this stage, people recognize that we have at least a little bit of control over our desires. That doesn't mean we have total control over our desires. Or people at this stage don't necessarily agree that we have like total control, but we certainly at least have some control to decide where we want to go with life, and that's going to be based off of what habits we developed. You know, do we develop good habits or do we develop bad habits? And by good habits, what's meant here is pro social habits, the kinds of habits that are going to lead to you becoming a productive and valuable member of society. And by bad habits, we mean, well, back to here. So, the entire theme of the civilized stage what it is about subsuming your own will in order to benefit, or in order to get along with others, in order to develop habits and to develop a society ultimately where people can get along. And by doing this, people at this stage come to recognize that by letting go of their short-term gratification and, letting go, that ultimately they benefit quite a bit because they get to enjoy the benefits of a society that is also doing the same, that is not going to impose upon them, that's not going to, lie, cheat, steal, thief, well, thieve and steal are the same thing, commit violence, etc. All these short-term impulses that we saw back in the animal stage. So by cooperating in this way, by agreeing, hey, I won't hurt you if you don't hurt me. In fact, I'll be productive if you be productive. But by making these sorts of silent agreements, we all benefit in the long term. We have much easier lives than we otherwise would have if we were all acting in the animal stage. So that's the whole theme of this stage. And in fact, it is also considered the primary job of a parent in our society and in most societies to get children out of the animal-like stage and develop their will up to the civilized stage, to the point that they can get along with others, that they can develop, that they can let go of their short-term impulses just enough to be able to function within a civilized society. Okay, we consider parents that do this good parent. Like, that's the primary job of a good parent. Now, the last thing to note here is this is the stage that this intuition or this idea of free will develops, because now it's like, okay, so I have some control over free will. Or I have some control over my will. So then my will is free. I'm free to choose good or choose bad. I have some control over these things. So that this is where you get this idea that of free will. Now, for those of you who might know a little bit about spiral dynamics, like, these levels are definitely influenced by spiral dynamics. Okay, like, if you don't, you don't need to know too much about it. Like, I'm going to explain all these levels on their own terms. But for people that do, it might be helpful to know that this stage starts at like the blue or 4 stage. That's why I kind of colored it blue, to be honest. And it goes up until somewhere around the green or stage 6. Whereas this stage, animal stage, is more like level 3, the red stage and below. This is about 4 through 6. But the next stage usually starts somewhere around 6. 6 is usually very awkward with it, a little crude with it, and it fully starts developing in the level 7 yellow and the level 8 turquoise stages. And this is what I'm calling the divine journey. Now, like I said, you don't need to know anything about spiral dynamics. Just anyone that does can kind of follow along and maybe map some of these levels onto that system. Okay, so the divine journey is when the civilized stage develops enough to where someone starts recognizing what the will is as a whole, like recognizing the will as its own thing. Whereas in the civilized stage, people still really heavily identify with their wills. They're identified with, I want these things and I want to stay away from these things, and that's still the primary purpose of things. Like back in the animal stage, people are just completely subsumed by their short-term impulses. The civilized stage really is only a small step up in a way, because it's not that someone is examining the will or transcending the will in any way in the civilized stage. They simply have a better strategy than the animal stage. The animal stage is just people are just kind of unwise and not thinking things through, whereas the civilized stage is just a better strategy to get what you want in the long term. It's a more sustainable way of getting achieving and fulfilling your desires and staying away from the things you're averse to. But this is the stage that people start to recognize the will just as it is. Like what is it? It's not just a better strategy. Well, it kind of is, actually. It's where one recognizes sort of the ultimate strategy, because they're starting to look at what the will really is and what the ultimate goal of the will is. And the ultimate goal of the will is to basically make reality match itself, to be fulfilled. Like this is how the body and the mind react to the will, is that we desire something, and then we go out into the world and try to make the world match the thing we desire. Uh, this is just a good example, a nice way to make this simple, is that the will says, I'm hungry. And so we move our butts into the kitchen and we go and cook ourselves up a meal, and then we eat, and our will is fulfilled. So we have changed reality to match our will, to match our desire. And by changing reality in this example, I mean we cooked ourselves some food and ate it. We changed our outward circumstances from not being fed to being fed. Okay, makes sense. I mean, this is what I mean by making reality match the will, going out to the world and fulfilling our desires. Well, what happens at this stage is that people recognize that a permanent satisfaction in this way is utterly impossible. It can't be done, because once you achieve a desire, another one just appears, and so you might feel like a short-term satisfaction, but then another one will just appear, or you'll get bored. And all boredom is the desire for a new desire. So you'll see this a lot, like when sports stars or like just everyday people, even when they achieve like a big goal, they get like a new car, or maybe a sports star wins the championship, or I work hard throughout high school to get into that good college, whatever it might be. You achieve that big desire, and people for maybe a short time, maybe for just a small moment, sometimes you get this big thing, but the satisfaction only lasts for the briefest moment. That does happen a lot. Or maybe sometimes it lasts for like a few days, but usually it's not much longer than that. It's not much longer than maybe a few days at the outside, that we feel satisfied with ourselves. We're satisfied in our desire, until boredom appears, or maybe just a new desire appears right away. And when we're bored, like I said, all boredom is just the desire for a new desire. That, yeah, I don't see a direction to go. I'm bored, so I just I desire a new desire. So when someone starts recognizing this pattern and sees it for what it is, what they realize is the will's ultimate strategy of obtaining some sort of permanent satisfaction through achieving, through making the world match the will, is impossible. Like, it won't work. You can't do it. You can make the world match your will as much as possible. You could become emperor of the universe, and it wouldn't matter. You still could not satisfy all your desires. You would still just have a new desire, or you would become bored. So this strategy is impossible. So what happens? What happens then is sort of a rudimentary Buddhism, you could say, and people then go, "Oh, so the solution is inward. I need to make my will match reality, my inside match the outside, rather than make the outside match the inside." And so this is the new strategy people wind up taking. And what this looks like is like another realization after this is the realization that, if I make my will, my desires match what I already have, which is called contentment. What this is saying, I want to be desireless. It's the exact same thing, like the extinction of the will, or as here, I'm gonna grab a book. This man right here, his name is Arthur Schopenhauer. Let me hold him up. Arthur Schopenhauer was a 19th century German philosopher. Now, Schopenhauer talks a lot about this. That's why I brought him up and showed him to you. Um, he calls this what did he call it? The will to not the will to extinction. The will turned against itself. The will the will that wants to get rid of the will. is basically what he's talking about. Yeah, the will turning on itself. That's what this stage is saying that hey, instead of trying to make the world match my desires, if I make my desires match the world, I could maybe rest in a sort of permanent satisfaction, because I'll only desire what's already here then. I won't desire for things to be any different than they already are. So when something appears, I'll desire that, like whatever appears, even if it's pain, even if it's struggle, even if whatever it might be, if I could train myself, because remember back here we decided that we have some control, that the desires we feed will become stronger, the desires we don't feed will become weaker. We learned that back here. So I can maybe train myself to just desire what's already here, to be content. I can maybe train all my desires to go extinct, because that's saying the same thing. So the ultimate goal of this stage is the desire for desirelessness. Now, that's going to come across as a contradiction, because it is, and that will get resolved in the next stage, and I'll tell you how it gets resolved. But that's sort of the plan at this stage. The plan here is now people here are thinking on like even their thinking process is at a much more advanced level than even people back at the civilized stage. Like this is like the civilized stages were like, I'm gonna guess like 8 or 9 out of every 10 people that you meet is going to be at this civilized stage. Like their entire thing is going to be about, how do I negotiate with other people? How do I negotiate with society to most fulfill my will without agitating other people too much, without being too much of a jerk? And this is why you just see just this explosion of content, but this explode, like everyone wants to talk about ethics and morality, and that's talking on this level generally speaking. But when you get here, people are thinking on a whole different level, because now they're going, I don't desire the riches, I don't desire the fame, I don't desire the glory or anything like that. They're not after these things. They don't care about these things, generally speaking. I mean, yeah, I mean it's more convenient to have money than to not. It's more convenient to have skills than not. Like it's not that you abandon all that, because you still have a body you need to maintain, with food and shelter and whatnot. But it's like, those aren't like ever increasing pleasures, ever increasing fulfillment of the will is not something people on this level are any longer all that interested in. What they want is an inner type of development, where they try to get their desires and their will to match what they already have, to be more content. So a lot of people in this stage start meditating. Like this is where meditation uh, first crops up in people that do learn to meditate. And I'll tell you what, meditation will take you very far along this path. Like at least the meditation that I'm familiar with, which is uh, I'm most familiar with anapanasati, which is meditation on the breath, but I'm also familiar with many satipatthana practices, including like Goenka Vipassana, um, and I'm also familiar with Rinzai Zen. Um, so, there's a lot of different approaches to meditation, but I would say Buddhist meditation techniques, um, or at least the ones I'm familiar with, will take you quite far in this journey here. So, if this is where you're at, like I would highly recommend going and learning uh, a formal meditation technique. Okay, now let's talk about the line. So beyond this line, we're technically not even talking about developing the will anymore. Like the will is at its highest development here. Like because it is people at the stage that are seeking the highest, like it's people here that are truly asking, what is the final development, what is the ultimate goal of the will, where does this all cap out, and that's kind of where they're aiming, is toward that highest goal of the will, which is the will turned against itself, ultimately. Like the earliest attempts by stage 6 in spiral dynamics are more along the lines of why don't we satisfy everyone's will with by just basically basically satisfying everyone's basic needs. And so that's kind of the crudest attempt, the first crude attempt. But people that get beyond that, like I said, they're it's the will turned against itself. It's the will that seeks to be permanently satisfied by not having desires pop up anymore at all. This is the final level of the will, really, like the highest level of development of the will, in a sense. Beyond this, we're not technically developing the will anymore. Um, so this is why I'm calling it the line of will transcendence. We're entering something a little different now. And I put this note here of transcend and include, because it's not that you get rid of the will beyond this line. That's not what's going on. Um, it's that beyond this line, you're transcending and including it. Like you're going beyond it, but you're including it. It's still there. Make sense? So this is the line. This is the line from like the will technically doesn't really develop much further beyond this. We're talking about something else. And by the way, the next level is would map onto spiral dynamics, I think, at the indigo level, at level 9. Um, and then the last level is going to map. I'm not even really sure. Like there's not a lot of discussion of what's beyond level 9, but I know this next level most certainly maps onto level 9. That's the level that I'm going to call consciousness. Now, consciousness, like this level is just pure subjective observation of the body, mind, and will. It's kind of a detachment from and just a pure observation of the body, mind, and will, however they pop up, however they appear. Now, I'm going to use the body as an example here because I think it's probably the one that's easiest to understand. Like when you do a Vipassana retreat, like Goenka Vipassana, um, great meditation technique. Go learn it. I can say a lot of positive about the Goenka Vipassana movement. It's free. They just want to teach people the technique in the end. Um, what they do when you learn the Vipassana technique proper on day 4 is they start you with observing the body, observing sensations on different parts of your body, however that sensation might show up. So that I mean, when they teach you it, they even name a bunch of examples. Maybe you feel an itchy feeling. Maybe you feel pressure. Maybe you feel heat or cold. Well, however, like whatever sensation is present on that area of your body that your attention is currently active on, just observe it however it shows up, and then once you observe it for a moment, you move to the next, and that's basically the technique. But all like go to the retreat and learn this properly. I think I'm just giving this as a demonstration of what I'm going to be talking about here with consciousness. uh so that would be observation of the body. But you can do the same with the mind, you can do the same with the will. And in fact, if I'm being honest, the will is really, it's really not its own thing. Once you get to this level and you start observing the will just as it is, this is the level that starts to recognize, oh, the will is not really its own thing at all. It's just a collection of thoughts in the mind, and then uh, emotions or feelings really that pop up in the body, and feelings are all bodily sensations. Like the sensation of anger for me often shows up as like a dryness or a tightness in my throat. Fear is often a pressure in the chest. Uh, um, at this stage, this is the kind of thing that you start recognizing and you start learning, because you're just observing the body, observing the mind, and ultimately observing the will as well, uh, just purely as it is, however it shows up. You don't detach, or you don't push away any sort of desire. So if you have a desire that's just anger or a murderous desire, you don't push it away. You just observe it. It's just there. It's just another desire, just as much as the desire to, I don't know, uh, feed all the puppies is, or something nice. So So it's just however these desires show up in the body and in the mind, you're observing them. Pure subjective observation. You're the observer. And in fact, it's quite a it's you could say that you're disidentifying with the will as well as the body and the mind in order to just observe it. You're not trying to control it. it like you're you're just studying it like a scientist. And in fact, I think this is where this stage is entered from, because that's kind of what you're doing at these Goenka retreats. Is you're just studying these sensations like a scientist, although you're not like writing papers or writing anything about it or anything like that. In fact, they'll discourage you from doing these kinds of things. You're just observing it just as it is. But I think for a lot of people that come into the stage, what happens is they want to control their desires because they're still thinking in these terms back here of I want to get rid of my desires. I want to empty myself of desires. So they're still thinking in these terms, but what they realize is I need to observe my desires and understand them a lot better. So they start studying them, their desires, they start studying their will like a scientist. But what happens, I think, is people that come to the stage recognize that, oh, the observing itself is desireless. Because if I disidentify from the will, if I step back from the body and the mind and the will and just identify as the observer, I am resolving this contradiction of desiring desirelessness. I because that's a problem. That's a big problem for the previous stage, for the divine journey stage. That how can you desire desirelessness? Like you can never get beyond that point, right? Well, the resolution of that is just purely observing the desires. So, like I said, if an angry desire comes up or the desire to play with puppies comes up, I love dogs, by the way. They're the greatest thing. Um, the one thing I cannot stand is people that hurt dogs. Ugh, I love dogs. But see, I'm observing my desire. I'm observing my desire for treating dogs very kindly and my aversion to people that harm dogs. See, it's popping up. There it is. It's in the mind. And now I'm going to continue. So yeah, at this stage, like the subjective observer that can step back and just observe the will is desireless. It's just observing. It doesn't have a preference for positive positive desires versus negative desires, for desires versus being desireless. It doesn't have any preference as far as this goes, because it is just stepping back and it's observing them just as they are. Consciousness has no desires, it observes desires. So that's what happens in this stage, is that people more and more identify with the observer that's just observing things. And this stage is sort of the stage that you're going to see people like a lot of popular spiritual gurus and people that write books, like they're the ones that actually have something legitimate to them, are actually kind of onto something, usually are writing from this level, usually. So a popular one that I would point to is maybe Eckhart Tolle. He's definitely encouraging people into this, of just stepping back and subjectively observing things. And what you find out, what's kind of weird about this level is the more you do it, the more you realize needing to control things doesn't need to happen at all. Like getting mixed up into things, and identifying with your body, identifying with your mind, and identifying with your will, which is the desire to control things. That's what the will does. If you get mixed up in that, it actually kind of makes things a lot worse. Like Jed McKenna would call this stage human adulthood. I think this is the stage of human adulthood within Jed McKenna, because this is the stage people start letting go. They just observe the mind, they observe the body, they watch this character complex, this body, mind, will, character thing. It kind of operates on its own just fine. It's kind of built to survive in the environment that it's in. When it needs fuel, it goes and gets food. When it needs to waste extra it needs to expel waste, it goes to the bathroom. It kind of runs fine on its own, and you can just go through life observing. You can go through life with your hands off, and in fact, it's a much more pleasant, peaceful, um, easier existence, to let go and let things just happen, and just observe the body, mind, will, and environment as well. Um, it's not limited to inner stuff, but I people at this level still obviously see and hear and taste and smell, etc. Like the environment is what just as much. Uh, yeah, it's like life is a lot easier, from this perspective here, from doing things here, because you're just not as involved in things anymore. Uh, like there it goes. There's that desire. It comes and it goes. So that's this place. Now, before I go on to the next stage, again, like I said, I could have drawn a line between this stage and the next. I really could have, because it's the biggest leap of all. Um, and I am only talking about this next stage, which, I'll go to it now. I'm going to call all consciousness. The Advaita Vedanta word for it is Brahman. Like this stage is full identification with the Atman, subjective consciousness, your subjective perspective, your subjective observer. It's like before, like back at the line, or before the line, you were identified with the body, mind, and will. But here you're identified with the observer. You're watching the body, mind, and will. But here, and this is the final stage, this is the highest stage of development, you're completely disidentified even with subjective consciousness, even with, uh, not only the character, but also the witness. You might say, that, when you cross the line, you disidentified from the character, but when you got to this point, you also disidentified with the actor that was playing the character. is maybe a good way to put it. Another way maybe to say this is like, back when before the line, you were locked in Plato's cave watching the shadows on the wall, or maybe watching a movie. uh, like you were just locked in, and to you this was reality. What was going on in Plato's cave, what was going on in the movie, on the movie screen, is reality. Like this is it. This is, I'm watching things. I'm watching things, in the movie theater, but what's on the screen is reality. But then when you got to this stage, what you did is you realized, oh no, I'm actually someone that's watching the movie. I'm in the audience. I'm in the audience of watching the movie. But this is where you just walk out of the movie theater. there's there's just no more, like you walked out, you realize the shadows on the wall in Plato's cave were the shadows on the wall in Plato's cave right here. You realize I'm the audience and not the movie. But here you're walking out altogether. There's no more movie. Or it's not just no more movie, there's no more movie theater. You leave the whole thing. And you realize that it's all just movies. That's all it is. And it's all just audience members. That's all it is. In fact, it's none of that. It's it's you walk out altogether. I think the metaphor I prefer, the metaphor that I understand it best from, is it's like the wave crashing upon the shore and rejoining the ocean. Like we could sort of point at a wave and go, okay, that is an individual wave, but it's so in a way it's kind of separate from the rest of the ocean, but it's also really not. It's still just water in the ocean. It's still the same ocean, but at the same time, we do kind of identify it as being its own kind of thing, like the wave. And this is kind of, how I understand the transition from consciousness to all to like enlightenment. Essentially, this is enlightenment, is essentially what it is. If anything can be called enlightenment, it's this stage. It's this abiding sense of non-personhood, non-subjectivity. It's re-entering Brahman, re-entering the all consciousness that every subjective consciousness, uh, uh, sort of, disidentifies with in order to identify with its own locality. As Bernadette Roberts puts it, each subjective consciousness is consciousness that reflexively bends back on itself. It's when the all consciousness, the universal consciousness, locally bends back on itself in order to create this illusion of being a subjective individual being, an individual observer from this perspective. Okay, if you don't understand a lot of this, I don't blame you. I think my understanding of this is quite limited. I've spent uh, decades now uh, reading accounts of people that have achieved this stage, and so I'm sort of putting the puzzle pieces together from a not quite this level of development, and trying to piece together what this looks like. So if you are at this level of development, and uh, I know Jed McKenna estimates that there's like maybe 50 people on the planet at any one point that are at this level. It's exceedingly rare. But if you are at this level of development and I'm kind of misunderstanding something, let me know. I'd really like to know, and I'd really like to hear from you. So that's the best way I understand this level is it's the transcendence of subjective consciousness, the consciousness bending back on itself to create the illusion of a single perspective, and letting go of that, disidentifying with that, in order to re-enter the all consciousness, the wave subsuming back into the ocean. And from what I understand, it's kind of maybe a similar process to how we how we disidentified with the will and the body and the mind. It's just a disidentification with that subjective consciousness as well. So that's kind of how I understand it. Actually, let's bring up the whole chart again so you can take a look here. So just to briefly summarize the levels, is that we all start off at the animal-like stage where we are very captured by our immediate short-term gratification. People at the stage are they, they obey their impulses, they obey their will, they just do what it wants. And then most of us, though, wind up reaching the civilized stage where we develop this understanding that we can feed certain desires and starve others, and that will develop our characters in such a way that we have long-term benefits from being able to fit into society a lot better. And then at some point, people can, but like most people never develop beyond the civilized stage, but those that do enter what I'm calling the divine journey, which is a much more ascetic stage, where people realize that if they want to permanently be satisfied, they have to empty themselves of desires rather than try to accumulate more and more and more, or fulfill more and more desires. They have to stop doing that. That'll never work. Instead, I need to become desireless. That's the only way to permanently satisfy the will. So that's the strategy they take. And then after that, the contradiction of desiring that desirelessness is resolved through stepping back and just observing the will, just how it is, however it shows up, whether it's good desires or bad desires, whatever pops up, you just observe it, you let go of it, you don't muck around in it, you don't interfere with it, just observe it just as it is. And by doing this, you disidentify with the will, and you start identifying more with just your own subjective consciousness, your own subjective immediate experience of yourself and the world. And then if you can disidentify from that, you can reach the stage of all consciousness, or just, straight up enlightenment, I guess you could call it, where this delusion of subjectivity falls away, and you re-enter the great ocean of consciousness. So this is what I see as the development of the will, how we start off as children for the animal-like stage, and can develop all the way up through enlightenment, all consciousness. So thank you for joining me. If you like this kind of content, Please like and subscribe. I'm still a new channel, and I would love to grow and share some of these ideas that I have, share some of my expertise on such matters uh, with you even more. So like and subscribe. I'm Eric Westfall. Please join me in the future, and have a nice day.